think Seattle has implemented or is implementing a tax credit there as well. But we did shoot some days there. But we shot over, I remember Thanksgiving and having that at midnight for the crew and for the Americans that were there in Canada. And then he went to work and did an extraordinary job. And then we had our premiere at the Toronto Film Festival 2007. And it was always my intention to, because the year I had been there before, sitting next to Lisa Wilson from Hyde Park Entertainment saying, Lisa, I'm going to bring Battle in Seattle here, because I remember standing there with Bobby and the cast of Bobby, and we were all friends watching the reaction. And so we did, and we had sort of a lot of heat in the bidding war and all that, and we ended up with Sync Capital Films, and I referred to them earlier in this interview, and they were the ones that took it off the shelf for a while. And we got caught in sort of, they had a change of commands and change in their company, and so we were sort of left, which happens, dangling in a company that was going through a lot of changes. And it just is too good of a film to have that happen. So I have to say, in defense of a couple of our executive producers on Battle in Seattle, they started their own independent distribution company and have done their very best. Whatever I can say, even if we have limited advertising, I've seen billboards here in LA and in New York and advertisements in the LA Times and all that. We have very limited money, and they've done their very best. But P&A, without question, is very important here. And so I think the best way that we can get people into the theaters, because it's one of the best reviewed films right now out in the nation, that I can say. But if people don't see advertisements on television, and they only have a little bit here and there because of budgets, it's going to still probably be hard for us. So the best thing that can happen is that we actually garner some buzz or Golden Globe or Oscar. And I know Golden Globe has a category for Best Ensemble, and that's certainly, I mean, I'm not sure what other ensembles are out there, but we should certainly be considered. And for Oscar buzz, it's just that good of a movie.
Were you on set? Were you on set for the shoot?
I was on set for all through pre-production, and then I was on set for the first week, the third and fourth weeks, and the sixth week of the shoot.
Got it.
So I guess out of 6 weeks, I was on there for 4 weeks.
And were there any particular moments that stood out to you during the times you were on set that particularly sent chills up your spine?
Well, yes. I mean, there's a scene, one of the days, I don't want to give it away, but there's a scene with Charlize Theron, and she plays a pregnant, really bystander that gets caught in this. And something drastic happens to her. And interestingly enough, her character, Ella, is married to a police officer played by Woody Harrelson. And I don't want to go into depth at the moment now because I don't want to give it all away, but the audience, there's a hush in the audience, and then there's an absolute, like, people go, I mean, you can hear this gasp, and it's one of the most riveting scenes I've seen in movies in a while, and I keep getting that from people. That did, and on Thanksgiving Day, I was just talking about Thanksgiving Day, we were out in the streets, and there had been a sort of very almost force majeure, but it was a very strange Arctic storm blew in, because Vancouver doesn't get a lot of snow, and we were out there, and there's a scene also with Woody, and because there was something that happened to he and Ella in the riots, he takes it out on one of the protesters, and there is a huge chasing that ensues, and there's some very chilling moments. There's also a chilling moment during there's several. I mean, I could go into it, but I think that, in our trailer, you can see there's one of those chilling moments where Martin Henderson talks about the blood of his brother is on the hands of the sort of corporate America, the people that are destroying the trees, the people that are not allowing medication to Africa because of financial purposes, gain, people that are hurting, wildlife, animal life, so that they can sell ashtray made out of a turtle shell or whatever it may be. It goes deep and it goes wide. And although it seems like this is good timing, I'm just glad that it sounds like people are getting more friendly, environmentally friendly, and more aware of this. But I can tell you that a riveting scene is when Martin Henderson does shout out, "The blood of my brother is on your hands, you MFs." And it's a riveting scene. So those are three of those moments, but there are many, I must tell you. And it was quite a feat for the director to be able to take each storyline and weave them together. And we added in, I was working a lot with Cairo and some of the news stations out in Seattle where we were garnering a lot of original news footage. We interspersed real-life news footage throughout the film. And we showed a quote of Howard Schultz, the owner of the CEO of Starbucks. It's a moment where people actually laugh in the film because they could see he was just more concerned about some of his things. His shops needed to be shut down, and he was pretty upset about that. Meanwhile, not recognizing that people were getting hurt out there, and basically Seattle became a war zone for 5 days. So it was there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. So,
does this movie have a political point of view?
Well, some say when they look at the reviews that it would in some sense, but I believe that what Stewart tried to do is take the views, the POVs from the politicos to the protesters to the police to the anarchists for a moment. We made that small because it was really, and from a bystander, I think it really wasn't one view. I mean, Stewart may have his personal views, but I think what he tried to do is really make a very well-rounded, fair piece so that we saw all the views in there, at least from the people that were in the riots themselves and some of the people from the World Trade Organization, the people attended that really tried to voice their opinions why it was important to get the medication to, millions or, kids that are dying, and that we would trade profit for human lives. Those views are heavily in there. So there may be a certain view, the way that we look at it through this particular project. We certainly aren't the ones that are, the corporate America or the medical organizations and so forth it's not really from their view, no. But we do a well-rounded view from everyone else. But again, I'm not trying to put down corporate America, but there are certain things here that must change, and we felt very strongly about them. I know Stewart did. At the heart of it, Stuart Townsend did. And I was there to support, and many of us were.
Do you see a tension between making an entertaining movie and making a thought-provoking movie intended to push social change?
Do I see a tension?
Yeah. Do you have to give up one to get the other, or what do you think?
I see a tension. I didn't see a tension in being able to raise the financing for this. Do I wish we had, bigger distributors came? Maybe, I never really thought about it, but maybe distributors were afraid of it because the movie is stellar. The cast is amazing. The performances are outstanding, and the movie itself is outstanding. So maybe at the end of the day, maybe they were afraid of it. I don't know. It's a good question, Luke. It's funny. I was watching The Tonight Show the week before last, and I had a star on another movie that I just finished. Interesting, he stars in a movie called American Carol, which is the opposite end of this. But that's not my movie. But Kevin Farley is starring in one of my movies that we're posting right now. I did not do American Carol, let me say that. And but interestingly enough, and Charlize had just been on The Tonight Show, and Jay Leno had spoke to Charlize about Battle in Seattle, and he said he loved the movie so much and all that. And then a few days later, Kevin was being interviewed, and Jay Leno was announcing Battle in Seattle and saying something like, "Oh, how do you get people in the theaters about, anti-corporate America for paying for things, but when you're trying to get them in the theater?" So I guess what I'm saying is, there might be that problem. Maybe